Our biggest job now is to reclaim who we are.
That when you look back on your life, you don't remember how good you were or what you did. You remember how you feel.
When did you learn to return to yourself?
Probably during the most trying and difficult and challenging times of my life. I made the big scary decision to sell my house and move into rented accommodation with somebody else. And I started using that person as a mirror. What is this person mirroring back to me?
Since that moment that you have found yourself, how do you feel?
Amazing. I feel alive.
Let's understand little Amber.
Yes, I was child of the 80s, born in 1980. That was in a part of England, Lancashire. It was illegal for a woman to have a bank account until 1975.
What were those changes that were happening that you didn't want to happen?
Period starting, changes to my body, breasts growing, yeah.
When did you learn to return to yourself? Could you start by telling the viewer who you are? That is where we should start from.
Give it a go. Yeah, it's great to be here, Obehi. Thank you for having me on the show today. My name is Amber. I live in England and I've been on a journey of chronic ill health and waking up to the severity of that, discovering the unseen layers of it, understanding the patterns that I've learned in order to survive. And the journey was really that, all of that combined, bringing me back to my true self. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Rediscover your true self. That is the essence of why we are here. We talked a lot about our collective experience, our indigenous knowledge, our way back to who we really are. Because the world that we live in today is very it is preoccupied, helping us to be confused. But our biggest job now is to reclaim who we are, to return back to ourselves.
Absolutely, yeah. That's something I didn't really understand. I'd become so kind of disconnected, so discombobulated, so I'd moved so far away from my own centre and the truth of who I really was, and learn many, I guess a lot of them coping mechanisms, adaptations as a child, to try and be a good girl and people please, and just this desire in me to try and keep everyone happy, and seeing that as my responsibility to keep everyone outside of me happy, versus connecting to the truth of what was coming up for me on the inside and learning to make myself from that place first.
What do you do on your day-to-day life today? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I see myself as a writer first and foremost. It's a passion that I had as a young girl. I didn't see myself as being any good at it particularly, but they'd say that when you look back on your life, you don't remember how good you were or what you did. You remember how you feel or you felt. So returning to the passion and my love for writing has been something that as a gift, I guess, through all I've been through, and something that I've returned to. And first and foremost in my day-to-day life, I see myself as a writer. I have a blog and podcast platform, and I'm just about to publish my second book, which becomes available for pre-order on the 30th of June. And then alongside that, additionally, I've created really an ecosystem of offerings that are based on reciprocity and abundance, rather than kind of the older paradigms that I used to work to around fear, scarcity, lack. And I support people on their health journeys with a number of accessible offerings, generally largely circle based. I retrain, through everything that I went through, the collapse of my life and my health in 2018. That then became the opportunity to retrain and do something differently so that I could keep a roof over my head and food on the table and all those things that we need to do alongside anything that might be going on in our lives. And I retrained and became a bodywork massage therapist, a yoga teacher trainer, and a circle facilitation leader. So I've combined all of those to to create what I have today to help and support other people who find themselves facing similar adversity and challenge with health.
Thank you so much for making your contribution. That is important.
Thank you.
All right. So what you do, is it, of course, I want to believe that this is a business, no, in that you are serving people. There are people that come to you because they need your help, apart from writing. Okay. Writing is a part of this global work that we are supposed to do, no? Being able to communicate your message out there. So tell me a bit about what do you do day to day within your area of business, in your helping people?
Yep. So today, as an example, I got up very early this morning. I'd written a chapter yesterday. It was an unexpected chapter to go in my book. I'd written that yesterday, and this morning I got up and typed that and prepared what I now understand is going to be another chapter, one of the ones nearer the end of the book. I then have learned to bring about a better balance to my life and to spend many periods of time throughout the day coming back to myself, checking in with myself, seeing how I'm breathing, making sure I'm grounded. So after I did some work with the chapter, I then went to boot camp, which is something I've only been. Physical training was a huge part of my life in the before days. I've only just been able to return to physical training in the last couple of years. So I really enjoyed doing that outside this morning and being more present with myself. I used to push and force and sit at my desk all day and then go and do the same at the gym on a night time, although I'd be on a treadmill or in a class or what have you. And now I take notice of my feet and the connection with the earth, the trees, listening to the bird song, enjoying the experience of being out in nature alongside training. And then I've come back and I'm recording this podcast with you, Obehi, and reaching listeners. And this afternoon I've got a meeting with my publisher, and I'll probably do a bit more work on editing my book. So a lot of my day today is obviously around the writing side. Tomorrow I'm relaunching my podcast, Your Migraine Story Matters. I recorded a first series last year, and then without meaning to, it's been a year and a year's flown by. So the next series launches tomorrow. And one of the offerings of Lee's Creations, I've got a 3-day circle journey next week. It's an embodiment journey called The Power of 3. So that just gives you a snapshot of what this today and the next few days might look like.
Lovely. So you talked about training. Are you like training people, or you are participating in the training organized by other people?
Yeah, I don't see it as training. I'm here to guide people, lead, teach. That's been a bigger role to step into, the role of a teacher, because that was something that I always wanted to do as a child. I longed to be a teacher and to help other people. But it's felt like a big role for me to step into in the last few years, and really embrace that and allow myself to do something that I actually always wanted to do and feels very purposeful. But yeah, a lot of my work is guiding and inspiring as well as teaching and leading other people, but all kind of not from a place of me telling them what to do, not from a place of me advising them, but from a place of me holding space for that person. My belief is that the answers all exist within. The moment I kind of woke up to how serious what I'd been living with for a very long time was in 2018. By then it had been 2 decades. Actually, I found all the answers once I was able to drown out the noise, tune into my own inner knowing and start listening to what was coming up from me versus what I was being told externally. The answers and the guidance was already there. So I don't see it as my role to tell other people what to do, but I certainly help facilitate holding space for them to reconnect with what their body, what I see as and believe as their body already signaling and trying to message to them.
Why do you think they come to you, to this space that you are holding for them? I recently, I was I was in an event that was organized by one of the persons that I know, okay, a friend in an area of northern Italy where I live. She has an interesting program where, of course, she gathered other people, men and women, coming around to participate in a theater. She calls it Peace Space. I said, wow, this is a beautiful thing because I went there with a friend, so we had a good time together. So when you say the space that you are holding for them, it really sounds very useful. It sounds very interesting. It sounds as something that can stay in the mind of the people. So, having said that, why do people come to you?
So where I'll take it back to myself first initially, part of the beginning part of the start really of what helped get me from where I once was to where I am now is that I started to identify needs that I had that had gone unmet and been unmet for a very long time. And one of the early number one needs that I had, I mean, of course there were many, but one of the big needs that I had that I was really desperate for and struggling without having was the need for support. And actually, when I was attending appointments, doctor's appointments and meeting with a specialist, I needed them to hear me. I needed to be believed. I needed to receive support and help from them in understanding and identifying what I was living with and understanding the limitations that were now kind of all day and every day upon my life. And I believe it's that. I believe there's an energy to it as well, a connection. You know, I'm really here for those who are ready to take back the reins of creation for the life and the health and the healing. For those who are maybe finding themselves on a bit of a journey with the existing, with what is available and accessible to us in the existing field of medicine, of mental health support, of therapy, and are really looking to further understand and open doors to healing that they might not have otherwise come across. So yeah, there's needs that the people have that I can help them with, that they connect and identify with. There's an energy to those that really gravitate more towards me. I've had to kind of like step back from the pushing and the forcing and the chasing and allow myself to be a little bit more. And I am, well, like yourself over here, you reached out to me on LinkedIn. You know, this is how it's happening now. People are gravitating towards me, and yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
That's interesting. You know, somehow, I believe that we attract who we are. We are putting ourselves out there, so the other people are like mirror. So we're actually seeing ourselves because the other people are us. It is a universal soup. We are all of us.
That can be a difficult practice to work with, though. Initially, I remember in the middle of the pandemic, I had to sell my house because I couldn't afford to keep paying the mortgage on my own with my circumstances. And then, you know, the pandemic came along, and it was the second time my income had been kind of swiped from me within as many years, within 2 years. And so I made the big scary decision to sell my house and move into rented accommodation with somebody else. And I started using that person as a mirror. You know, what is this person mirroring back to me, as one of my practices. And it's lovely to be on this side now, where the mirror, I like the reflection that I see in the mirror. But not always so comfortable or easy or straightforward to begin with.
Lovely. I have a question for you, Amber. You see, in the course of this conversation so far, we have spent, I think, about 13 minutes or so. You have used the term return to yourself a number of times. And I think that is vitally important. I think it's not by accident. When did you learn to return to yourself?
Probably during the most trying and difficult and challenging times of my life. So before the entire collapse of it from a physical perspective, in the years leading up to that, 2015 to 18, I'd gone through a lot of enormous change in my life. My dad had announced he had an aggressive form of cancer. I split up with a partner who at that time, I really saw as the love of my life. We've been together for a long time. I moved to a new city to be nearer work. There were a lot of enormous changes in my life, and I hadn't I hadn't accounted for that, but B, I hadn't really acknowledged the magnitude of it all either, and how a lot of it was happening and building up at once. And I missed the opportunity to perhaps do a little kind of life review or a little mini audit or a check-in with myself, and really kind of establish where I was at and what I might want going forward, or what things might look like. So I kind of got washed away with all that and ended up very mentally unwell, struggling enormously with depression, anxiety. Then came kind of like this downward decline of my physical health alongside my mental health. And I went on to have a mental breakdown in 2016, and had been suicidal ideation, I think we call it, for probably over a year. And it took until that point of breakdown, and very, 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 very close to end of my life, for me to recognize for the first time that actually I needed help. I needed to speak to somebody, and that was the part of the journey of returning to myself, voicing those words to someone, which at the time was an ex-partner. I expressed to him, I'd never done this in my life. I said to him, I need to speak to somebody. I am desperate. And it turned out he knew a counsellor. One of his friends' partners was a counsellor, and he said, do you want me to see if he can meet with you? He's actually a counsellor of children. But because I was so desperate, I didn't care that we knew this person. I didn't care that they saw us on, night we socialised with them. I was so desperate. And I started seeing that person. And in the first session, he recommended a journaling practice. Well, I was like, by that point, I was like, if you're telling me this is going to help me, I'm putting my trust and faith in you. And I went out the next day and bought a journal. And I couldn't see it for a while. I couldn't see it for a long time, that practice, that writing down what was really going on for me day to day, what was really coming up for me, how I was really feeling, the insights, things that I was noting, TED Talks, trying to keep myself above water, I guess. Yeah, trying to keep myself above water and kind of not drowning in it all. So yeah, that was I'd say a part that a time where I relate back to, where that was the beginning really of that kind of return to myself, that embodiment, that truth, those insights on a deeper, beyond all the surface level.
Since that moment that you have found yourself, how do you feel? That is the most important thing for me.
I mean, I was very unwell mentally. I was very unwell physically. The feelings of desperation that preceded that, I was very numb. So it was very difficult at that point to connect with how I was feeling. I guess, kind of in hindsight, there was a relief there. There was this a door open, a possibility, a way through it all. But yeah, in terms of how I felt, I would have still been, very mentally unwell, very physically unwell. And I'd spent 2 decades numbing out with work, with drink, with drugs, with TV, with shopping. So there was a thawing out process before I started to really feel.
So how do you feel now?
Amazing. I feel alive. I feel abundant. I feel joyful. I'm coming through the more vulnerable time of my health. It's connected to my menstrual cycle. So I'm just coming through that kind of period of 7 days that is a more vulnerable time for me. So there have been moments where my nervous system has been a little bit unsettled. There have been moments where the thoughts in my head have been kind of telling me that I've done something wrong. And that's part of the chapter that I've written actually for towards the end of the book, that is soon to be available for pre-order, because as I was writing this a letter which turned into a chapter, I was like, what am I, why do I think I've done something wrong for existing, for breathing, for bleeding? So there were, I feel how I feel today, energetic, just happy, amazing. But there are those moments where I'm still a little bit unsettled. My thoughts might be telling me one thing. I might want to go in another direction, but I'm present. I'm present with that. I'm in tune with that.
All of that is what makes us who we are, no? You're a human being.
Absolutely, yeah. And, there are times I don't feel exactly this wonderful all day, every day. There are times where we feel pain. There are times where grief comes up for sadness. That's been something I've been feeling in moments in the past week, I've noticed. But I think that's what it is for me. It's been giving myself that permission and allowing myself to feel all of it, and to try and become a witness to it and observe it rather than judging it and criticizing it and forming opinions around it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So in this podcast, we use what we call the NBA methodology. The N is what we have just done now, which is the now, where we look at you, what you do currently. But now we're going to know more about you, which is the which is the B, which is the before. So let's understand little Ambra. You were born and you grew up where? Tell us about that.
Yes, I was born child of the 80s, born in 1980. That was in a part of England, Lancashire. And we lived there for 3 years. So we moved when I was quite young from that part of England across to York. Well, not directly across, but about an hour and a quarter drive away to Yorkshire. And so Yorkshire, North Yorkshire in particular, is where I grew up and went to school, and then couldn't wait to leave home when I was 18. I didn't know that our ancestors couldn't do that without the permission of a man beforehand. And something I've just realised recently is I've connected with the opportunities that I've been blessed with that perhaps our ancestors weren't, and still many people around the world do not have access to. But yeah, I left home. I didn't seek permission. I didn't move in with a man or get married or anything. I kind of just left home at 18, ventured up to the northeast for the best part of a couple of decades, experienced what I experienced, and then came back down home to Yorkshire.
So what made you to leave the home and you were then try to discover something? What were you looking for?
Oh, freedom. Freedom. Yeah, definitely freedom. I was looking for that freedom. Mm-hmm. In some ways, yes. Yeah, in some ways, not so much others. I had the freedom to come and go as I please. I had the freedom to work. Again, not all our ancestors didn't, especially as women, didn't necessarily have that. I was able to work. I was able to come and go as I pleased. I was able to eat what I wanted, go out when I wanted, spend time with who I wanted. So yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that, because sometimes it doesn't always feel like we have the freedom to be true to who we are and honour where we're at. But I've learned that. I experienced a lot more freedom in particularly the last 4 years, than I ever have in my life. And sometimes it felt like other parts of it were not quite as free. But actually, now you've asked me that question and I've sat with it a little bit. There's more, there's like I say, especially with the ancestral side of things, there's been more freedom in my life than what other people, particularly women, might have experienced before.
Can you break that down for somebody? That part that was not free, that are ancestors.
Yeah, absolutely. I've written a chapter about this for my book, actually, so I'm able to go into a bit more detail. So, for example, it was illegal for a woman to have a bank account until 1975. I was born in 1980, so that wasn't that long ago. And I think that's something that we might have forgotten or become disconnected from. A woman was very much expected to get married and to fulfill her duties, to have children and to be the caretaker at home, and didn't necessarily always have the choices, particularly the choices that we have today with that kind of order of things. So yeah, that was quite a big one. I was able to have a bank account from the age of 1995. I was able to make those decisions myself. I was able to earn my own money. I didn't have to give it away to anybody. I was able to rent a home. I was able to then go on and buy a home. All the things that women up until only a few decades ago were certainly more challenged with, and then before that might never have even had that choice or option at all.
All right. So at what point did those questions came to you of this freedom of what women could do or could not do?
I feel like it was more of an awakening now in 2018, waking up to the truth of how severe the illness I was living with really was, waking up to the truth of how life-limiting and challenged my life had become and impacted. And I remember having the responsibility for my mortgage, so having the responsibility to generate an income and pay for that. I had the responsibility to keep that roof or a roof over my head and food on the table. And it was in that moment where I recognised that reality, that truth, that I realised that actually, if I have full responsibility for keeping a roof over my head and food on the table, I want full responsibility for my health. And I guess now looking back, that progress that we've made in the history of time in humanity really helped me to find a freedom that I hadn't had before, and that, like I said, wasn't necessarily wasn't available to our ancestors, and again even a great many of people in the world.
So Amber, tell me, you are about 13, you are 10, you are around 11. What is going on around you?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that was at the point where I saw two women rent a house together, two friends, and they rented a house together. And I remember thinking, when I'm older, when I grow up, I want to do that. I want to move into a house with my friend. So yeah, that was one of the things. Very, a lot going on at that age as well, isn't there? Puberty, hormones. Not for me, a very uncomfortable and enjoyable experience. Did not feel comfortable in my body. Did not understand, I guess, was where it started. The changes that were happening, didn't want them, and then they didn't feel welcome. I didn't want them to happen. So yeah.
What were those changes that were happening that you didn't want to happen?
Period starting, changes to my body, breasts growing. Yeah. Oh, I didn't, I also had the opinion and the impression that it was easier to be a man. And so part of me, thought from the, maybe the messaging and the programming and things that I'd received, that life would be easier if I was a boy. So part of me wanted to be a boy. And when I look back, it was for those reasons.
Mm-hmm. And what did you do about that?
Cut my hair off. I cut my hair off and I shaved it. I cut my hair off and I shaved it at the back. And I started wearing, because as a young girl, I loved my dresses and skirts. Like, I loved my mum made all of my clothes, which I adored. And each year she would ask me if I wanted dresses or skirts, and I would just choose. And for around that age, I stopped wearing the dresses and skirts and started wearing jeans and t-shirts for the first time. And I didn't return to wearing dresses until I was in my 20s.
All right. So in this period, you're sort of questioning a lot of things now. But why am I growing breasts? What does it mean? Why boys don't have this, or I don't like it? Did you have the chance maybe to talk with your mates, with your colleagues, with your friends of the same age to say, but why are we developing like this? Why other people are not developing like that? I'm sort of
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, well, we didn't talk, those decades, this was the 90s, this was the early 90s, the late 90s. We didn't talk about how we felt, our mental health. A lot's changed in that arena. And there's still a lot more for us to understand, but the conversations are more open. I remember the only time I ever spoke about it was at the dinner table once to an ex-boyfriend in my early 20s, and I blurted out that sometime I'd gone through violent and agonizing attacks had started just a few years before that. So that sent me into a really deep period of depression and, again, suicidal ideation at that time. But I didn't have the words for that. I didn't have the terminology for that. And I remember saying to him a few years after that had begun that sometimes I'm okay and sometimes I'm really not, and I don't understand why. But the fear of somebody hearing that, because we were it was an amazing celebration for my grandparents. It was their 50th wedding anniversary, I think it was. And I just remember the fear of what if somebody heard me, and I shut down and I never spoke about it again. Not for a very long time.
I see. Did you ever have those conversations with maybe your mom or your dad? Because sometimes it might appear very awkward. There are some conversations that we are supposed to have, but we don't ever have it. No? So sometimes, whether it is because we don't have that confidence, even though they're our parents, we are supposed to have those conversations, but sometimes, except for few do have, we go have those conversations with our friends. No. So I'm kind of curious if in your case you ever had that, since you were sort of worried, like sort of, but why all these changes?
Yeah, no, those conversations with neither parent ever happened. None of my friends knew what I was living with. Nobody, I didn't tell anybody that I knew I was living with migraine disease, migraine attacks, only because as a child, I used to go to visit my friend's house, we'd have dinner, and I remember her mum struggling to prepare the food for us because she had a migraine attack, and she would ask us to massage kind of the back of her head and her neck at the table. And so that was the only reference point I had for realizing or understanding that this must be migraine. And I did what I thought you were supposed to do. So I told the doctor, but every time I did that, they told me it wasn't migraine, it couldn't be, it was too difficult to diagnose. And so outside of that, no, I didn't tell anyone. None of my friends knew. And I'd been, by the time I hid it. I look back now, I kept quiet about it. I kept it hidden. And I didn't stop hiding it until 2018 because I simply couldn't hide it anymore. It was no longer happening or confined to a weekend in a dark room behind closed doors. It was all day, every day, 24/7. And yeah, I couldn't keep it quiet any longer. And that was really when I found my voice.
Why do you think you were hiding it at that time?
A lot of the difficulty was communication, so expressing how it really was for me, finding the words. So that was a barrier, I guess you could say. Then also finding the spaces where, if I did, or on those occasions where I tried to speak up, to find the spaces where I was heard, because when I did mention things, that wasn't something that happened. So yeah, and the conditioning, I see it as now, that just put up and shut up, just keep carrying on, don't speak about your emotions, don't tell anyone how you really feel, just gotta, keep pushing forward,
All right. But now you have found yourself, you have grown because now you talk to people, you create space for them. Now your experiences make you richer, make you more wise, so that you can give counsel to other people.
Yeah.
I sort of say here quite often that we are supposed to live before we can tell people about life, because life is not a theory. We really do live. So we must first live, then we can talk about our experiences in life. So
Absolutely.
tell me, what kind of lesson do you take with you, Amber, as you maybe look at you growing up, your infancy, those experiences that you have had, you take it along with you as you move into your adulthood?
Oh, there's so many lessons, but I'll just go with the one that intuitively comes. My belief up until 2018 was that I didn't need anyone, I could do it all on my own, that I didn't need help and support. I saw that as a weakness. And then to wake up to that truth that I do need help and support, and I need a lot of it, not just the physical or the mental kind, but actually there are many different areas of support. One area of support in particular that I needed more than any other, not necessarily, more superior or important to, but very much needed, was emotional support. And yeah, I think that's there are so many lessons, but that's one of the biggest things that comes to me, and is the how much support and how many different elements there are to support that I need and still continue to. That's absolutely something that I'm taking into the rest of my life. I was guided to increase the levels of support in 2023. And my health had improved to such an extent by that time that I'd broken the chronic pain cycle, I'd broken the chronic fatigue cycle, menstrual health, my menstrual migraine had improved massively, I'd broken the severe pain cycle, I was experiencing wellness and energy that I hadn't experienced in my adulthood, to give it some context in that way. And there I was being guided to increase the levels of support, which felt counterintuitive to me. It felt like surely as I'm getting better and my health's improving, I would need less, but that wasn't the case. I needed more, and I was like, I'm listening. I am listening. I am not, I'm not resisting this. I'm not telling myself any, I'm not applying any narrative to this. And then I did bring in more support, and with the series of events that happened towards the end of that year, it became clear as to why, and how much better kind of placed I was for navigating what lay ahead.
Thank you so much for that. Now we're in the third part of the conversation, which is the A. We'll call it the NBA, now, before, and after. And that usually talks about the legacy. Because now we know where we're coming from. We know our story. We know what makes us who we are. Now that talks about what do we make out of that. So as I look at that, I look at what you're doing. You are pouring yourself into the life of other people who you are encouraging. You are holding a space for them. And that is fundamentally important, because now that talks about also what do we want to leave behind. We don't just take and take and take. We also give at the point. So now I'm going to tell you about a little story. When I was growing up in Nigeria, there was this game that we used to play as little kids. When we cross our legs, you will basically hold the legs of the person in front of you, but not the two legs. You will hold one of the leg of one person, because you basically cross the legs like this. You will hold the leg of one person, hold the leg of another person. The other person hold the other leg, and the other person hold the other leg. So you basically form a human chain like that. Then we will wrap a very big ball. Usually we will do it with a cloth. We put it in the middle. Then as the ball is rolling, we will be raising our legs like this. Kweki yaga yaga, kweki yaga yaga, oi na wo bovende yaga, obe yoda de yaga, kweki yaga yaga. So basically, the song is saying that as you are playing around, no, that this shall not fall from me. It shall not fall by my side. I will not be the reason that this ball that we are rolling falls. Therefore, I will play my part. I will play my part. I I would play my part. So everybody continued to move around like that. Then, of course, we enjoy it as little kids. So, of course, as an adult now, sometimes you reflect on all that. You see that life was beautiful. That life was beautiful because we live together, no, we share together. Because as a person, you can't really go that far as an individual, but as a people, there is nothing you cannot do. You can even move a mountain if you want, because the human beings are very powerful. But as an individual, you can't move a mountain. It's not possible for you. So that sort of tells me the importance of the support that you talk about. It's not because when we cry, it's not because we are weak. It's because we need each other. We are supposed to need each other. It's normal. It's normal like that. So tell me about again the people that you are supporting, because now you need support, but you also give support. You are play the game, no? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, that speaks to one of my main intention for this year really is to serve from a place of plenty, to make sure that my needs are met and taken care of, that I'm nourished, that I'm well resourced, so that I can serve others from a place of plenty without feeling depleted, without leading to exhaustion and fatigue and burnout. And with the current and existing paradigms in the world, that really a lot of what I've done in the last 8 years seems to have gone against the grain of all of that, including serving myself first, making space for myself in the way I show up for work and in the offerings and the circles that I create. But that really helps me to serve. I learned the hard way that when there was nothing left, there was nothing left. I couldn't do anything for anyone. So I had to start with me first. And then where I am now, all these years later, when I start with me first, I have a lot more to offer, a lot more to give to other people.
So you need to put on the oxygen mask first, right?
Yeah, we on a logical mental level, we know that, don't we? We hear that, but what part of our body receives it and believes it and leads and takes action from that place?
You've used the word ancestors a number of times. I want you to expand more on that.
Yeah, that's been a part of the journey I've been on, particularly the last 4 or 5 years, is reconnecting with our ancestors in various ways. So through meditation, through shamanic journeys, but also through research, exploring and understanding our history a little bit more, and exploring where we've come from and the challenges that we faced and how we have arrived at where we're at and where we are now. And I've feel like I've received quite a few gifts from my ancestors. Sometimes I questioned, we really fought for our right to vote. Women really fought for the right to receive an education, to train in certain careers like medical and law, for example. And we really fought for our right to vote. And at one time I was questioning, would they really be happy with the disarray that we find ourselves in now after fighting to the breadth and the extent that they did, so that they really fought with their lives. And I questioned that for a long time, and then to kind of realize where we are now and see where we've come from. Even in our homes, we have running hot water. We have a fridge that's often full of food, cupboards with food in, showers, baths. My grandparents, they had a tippler. I think it was called a tippler tippler tap, that's it. And their toilet was outside. They didn't have baths when, they had a tin bath in front of the fire when they were a little girl and a little boy. There were children in the Second World War. So yeah, really connecting with, finding out more about my parents and their parents and their parents, understanding the challenges, the trauma, the war, the poverty, the alcoholism, has really helped me understand more about who I am today, and how far we have come.
How do you usually embark on this research?
For me, a lot of reading. It was a childhood passion that had fallen by the wayside as a life of kind of, addiction and numbing out and burnout and fatigue had taken over. So when what happened to me in 2018, and I was exploring all the avenues, seeing a migraine specialist, asking for, expressing the need I had for support, asking what support was available to me and being told that there wasn't any. That then set me off on a journey of exploring other avenues and options, which for me was returning to my childhood passion of reading. I absolutely loved reading books. I even remember reading a book, I was probably about 12 or 13. It was by Judy Blume. I think it's called Deanie. It was about a young girl who had scoliosis, which is a condition of the back, and she'd had all of her path, her life mapped out for her. She was the really pretty one. She was going to be a model. And then all of a sudden she finds out she has this condition that requires her to wear a back brace. And she really looks and reflects, she has to look and reflect on her life very differently. Who the world thought she was and told her who she was going to be was not how it was transpiring or playing out for her. And she goes on a bit of a journey of, coming back to herself and reconnecting with herself in a different way. And for me, sharing with us that healing is possible. She didn't do it for a cure or, find the one thing. It took her on a bit of a journey exploring that. So when I returned to reading in 2018, I started to explore research alongside things I'd heard about. So someone had said that cutting gluten out for migraine could be really good for reducing migraine attacks, for example. So I found a book called The Migraine Miracle, which explored how our ancestors ate. So that comes back to the ancestral conversation. So that book was the first book I started with, and it explored how our ancestors ate in the past, and how we can reduce inflammation now in our bodies through our diet. And that was where it started. And it just progressed from there with more and more books, and which then led me to explore as well as the Western side of things. I was also exploring the Eastern and not favouring one over the other or seeing one as right or wrong. I actually found that a lot of the research that I did was a meeting in the middle of the science and the holistic, the science and the spirit, the holistic and the medicine, the Western and the Eastern.
All right. Amber, if you met somebody that is where you were, say, years ago before 2018, and you understand what this person is going through, and you want to give a recommendation, a counsel to this individual, where would you want him or she to start from?
Well, for me, it all started with speaking out. So, find a trusted person. Don't leave it as late as I did. That's I look back and it wasn't going to be any other way. So I don't look back with remorse or regret. I know myself well enough to know that it had to be that way. As much as it would be nice to visualize and imagine a different way, and I do want it to be very different for other people, it had to come with the entire collapse of my life. But for other people, I don't want them to leave it that late. I want them to speak out much sooner, to find someone that they can confide in, that they feel safe speaking with, and let them know what, how they really feel and what's really going on for them. So like I mentioned before, for me, that looked like I need to speak to someone. So I was expressing a need, and I am desperate. So I was sharing for the first time how I really felt.
So if there is one One satisfaction that you can say you've gotten in all of this journey, because life is a journey. What would you say that be, looking at where you are today, Amber?
For some people, for those who are where I was, it might not feel like you're on a journey. I see that a lot in the chronic illness community. There's a lot of us talking about being on a journey. There's a lot of people who don't feel like they're on a journey, and I can relate to that. So when I was first introduced to people as being on a journey, I didn't feel like I was on a journey. I thought I was doing what anyone in my frightful set of circumstances would be doing. I didn't think I was doing anything differently to what anyone else would be doing. And I certainly didn't think I was on any kind of, mystical journey. But it was through the reading of the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay in 2019. That was, I think, maybe my third book that I read. Or maybe I'd read a few, I can't remember now. But it was a book I read in that year. And that's where I recognised, oh, I am on a journey. I'm on a healing journey.
Thank you so much for that, Amber. I really appreciate this conversation. It has been a pleasure here talking to you. Thank you very much.
Amazing. It's been amazing. Thank you so much, Obehi. And thank you to everyone listening.
Thank you. And for us, for all of you, of course, that have listened to the end of this conversation, we always say, why not add your thought to it? Leave your thought in the comment section. If you have any question, anything that we share here that make any sense to you, even those that you do not agree with, why not let us know? We will respond to you. Amber will be ready to respond to your question.